By this point, you're probably already familiar with sandboxes, or you're using them alongside your coding agents. But setting up sandboxes in a fully type-safe, full-stack project has never been easier. And today I'm going to show you a quick example of how to do just that on the Agentuity platform. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, sandboxes are pretty popular right now, right? And for good reason. As we're letting coding agents write more and more of our code, we need to give them a safe place for them to actually execute that code and not touch any of our production data. Now, what's great about Agentuity is that sandboxes are just another service on our platform. It's an important one, but it's just another service, right? So you can use that with other things that we offer, like all of our streaming primitives, from SSE to durable streams, to all of our storage APIs, like our S3 compatible object storage, and a whole bunch of other things. And so if we think about the example that we're showing today, the way we're going to use sandboxes is just for the test environment. So we're going to generate code in both TypeScript and Python, and we're going to use an agent that we define on Agentuity to do that. And the sandboxes are really just to test the code that the agent created. And this is really just one of the many possibilities, right? You might want to have sandboxes be just your test environment, and you want to decouple your agent logic from that, right? So that's how we're getting the code that we show here and the output from the actual sandbox itself. But now to actually kind of see how this is working internally, the first thing that we're going to do is define the result from the sandbox. And you'll see some of the things that we provide for you with sandboxes. So you'll get the exit code, as well as standard out and standard error, and then the duration in milliseconds as well. From there, we're just going to define our input and output schema for our agent. And we'll come back to this in just a second, because the fact that this is type safe is going to be kind of useful later on. But from there, we're just going to create an agent and give it a name and a description, pass it the input and output schema, and then we're going to define the logic, right? And in this case, the main logic is really just generating some Python and TypeScript code using an LLM. And then from there, we're going to actually get to the sandbox part, right? So once we get the result from both of those, we're going to go ahead and run two different isolated sandboxes in parallel. And to do that, we're going to use this context.sandbox.run. Now, there's two different ways to run sandboxes on Agentuity. One of them is the one you see in front of you, but you can also do interactive sandboxes if you don't want to sort of spin them down as soon as you're done. But in this case, we're using the sort of more simple one, and it's just going to do a one-shot command. So it'll create the sandbox for us, it'll execute the commands that we send to it within that sandbox, and then it'll destroy the sandbox and kind of clean up for us afterwards. So in this case, we're going to use two different runtimes, of course, bun and Python, and then we'll define the different commands. So we're going to do bun run with the solution.ts file, which is the file that's actually on the sandbox that we got from the result right above here from the LLM. So it's going to store that in the solution.ts file, and then we're going to run that within the sandbox. And then down here, it's pretty much the same thing for Python. So we're going to use that context.sandbox.run. We'll pass it the commands that we want for this sandbox. And at the end, we're just going to return the structured results that we get. And here's where that type safety kind of comes into play. So if we head over to our web folder for our front end, you'll see that we have this use API hook. And that's where we can grab that data, and we know that it's going to be type safe. So when we come down here and actually display the results, we know that we're getting the schema in the exact shape that we want. And one more thing to kind of drive the point home about how you can use sandboxes with a bunch of other cool features is the fact that we add evals to the end of all this. So on Agentuity, we give you a full eval suite, and it comes with a lot of preset evals. So you can kind of just import the Agentuity evals package and use any of our preset evals to kind of just plug and play. But a lot of times you might want your own custom evals, right? So in this case, we're just going to do that. We're going to create an eval to determine code correctness. So basically, we're going to use an LLM as a judge. Once the agent is running, once it goes through this whole process, after it runs in the sandbox and gets that result, we can actually run an eval in the background to make sure that the code is actually correct. And with this, we can actually evaluate the sandbox result and not just kind of show it and see if it passed or failed, which I think is pretty cool. So there's a ton of things that you can do with sandboxes, and we'll have plenty of examples moving forward. But until then, thanks for joining me, and I hope you have a great day.